Language is one of the most complex human traits and is often seen as one of the skills that differentiates us from our other primate counterparts. However, new studies on marmoset monkeys have shown that monkey vocal communication is a lot more complex than we once thought. What's the science behind their communication, and what can our cute companions teach us about the evolution of human language? Welcome to BS, a podcast where we take an in depth look at different scientific and social phenomena and innovations whilst tying them back to broader societal perspectives and why you should care. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Honestly, if there's one thing I left from my degree with is the fact that monkeys should definitely be paying taxes. Like one of our first core neuroscience courses is about just basically the neuroscience of a lot of animals, but they definitely focus in on non-human primates. And like the more and more I learn about what they can do, it's just not fair. It's just not egalitarian that we're the only ones with the 9 to 5.
That's very, very true. But honestly, there's probably a lots of sections of the animal kingdom that purposely hide their abilities because they see what humans got going on and they're like, I'm good. I'm good, my dear. I'm good. Thanks.
Listen, that's fair, but let me tell y'all right now, non-human primates and orcas, you are on watch. um,
First of all, you always finna bet you the orca. One thing about you is that an orca is always at the scene of the crime for you.
like we've been studying y'all for too long. Y'all are also on watch. And honestly, this episode just confirmed a lot of my previous beliefs about how we're just learning so much more about like monkeys and apes and just non-human primates in general and the way that their society works and the way that they communicate, which is why we wanted to even do an episode on monkey communication because there's just so much new information about their ability to communicate. So we have three guiding research questions for this episode. One, what was our previous understanding of non-human primate communication and why is this breakthrough even important? Two, what are fee calls and how do marmoset monkeys use them? And three, what can we as a human society learn from these findings and why is it important to us?
Which is the question that's always on people's minds. But honestly, monkey communication in and of itself was such an interesting topic to me. Also, Gold, I think you're just trying to put the oppression we face as humans onto them. And that's not unfair. I gotta stick up for my marmoset monkey twins.
It's a heavy load. Can we all share it equally? Like, that's all I ask. We can have a 4-day week if we put them to work.
I feel like we do enough. But previously, humans, bottlenose dolphins, and African elephants were actually the only known species to vocally label their conspecifics. And a conspecific is just a member of the same species, basically, like Gold and Eye, our Homo sapiens, marmoset monkeys, have each other, stuff like that. And a group of researchers actually found that marmoset monkeys may actually be able to do the same. So, vocally label one another the same way that I call Gold Gold and Gold calls me Ilyana.
Yeah, and the thing is, the reason that we're focusing in on marmoset monkeys today is their capacity to do this vocal communication that Ileana described. Because the thing is, communication comes in a lot of different ways. Obviously, even just in human language, we have various different types of sign language. And it's just going to be defined as information, like a way that information is exchanged. And the thing is, non human primates have always shown a lot of communication through gesturing with their hands or other body parts. But this level of complexity with vocalization is not something that we've seen before in previous research. Now, a lot of previous research was done more so on apes than on monkeys because they are genetically more similar to humans and we like like to relate things back to us and how this information could help us with like human research and development. And
Mhm.
also, if you are confused by the different terminologies for apes and monkeys, one good way to tell the difference between them is if they have a tail or not. Usually, monkeys have a tail, and usually apes do not, which is why you don't have a tail. At least I think so, and neither do I. And basically, like apes were thought to not really have any, again, complex spoken language, and were just using gestures to communicate. And what we saw is that a lot of the gestures actually made sense to humans as well, which I thought was quite interesting. There was a study that studied chimpanzees in Uganda and then bonobos in, actually, yeah, bonobos in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and saw that one that like
Well,
90% of their, well, yeah.
also, you can restart if you like mess up. I just realized we don't have to go like linearly.
Okay.
Only because I was just like I felt like you were feeling stressed, so I was like, it's okay.
Right. I'm trying to think of where I should restart. I didn't mind the beginning of what I was saying,
Okay.
but I think I just repeated myself too much. I'll probably restart with apes making gestures with the right across to communicate. I'll some my keys. Okay. So, because we thought that the majority of apes' communication was through physical gestures, that's what we tended to study. And
Oh,
there was a study.
I'm so sorry to cut you off and make you restart again. But another thing I realized was we should make it sound like we're talking to each other instead of. I feel like sometimes we seem like we're reading out to the people on the episode, which we should. But like, I think to an extent we should be like, oh, Ilyana, something cool that Ilyana, did you know how we distinguish apes from monkeys? Or does that make any sense?
Yeah, okay. So, because apes mainly make physical gestures as their way to communicate, or at least that's what we as humans think, that's what the majority of research was done on. And there was actually this one study that I actually found very interesting that was studying both apes and bonobos in sub Saharan Africa. And another fun fact about apes, Ileana, is that bonobos and chimpanzees are equally as genetically similar to humans. Like people always say like chimpanzees are our closest relatives, which is technically true, but so are bonobos. They're equally as close to us, and no shade to chimpanzees, but bonobos are much nicer and cooler animals. So I'm just always trying to kind of like claim them. You know, it's like when
Mhm.
your second cousin once removed becomes famous. Like I like we need to be more adamant about being related to bonobos.
Honestly, bro, you literally had this exact conversation with me, which I just think is interesting. Honestly, I guess you could say it's all monkey business all around.
So corny. But
Listen,
honestly,
making the corny jokes on the pod, and you're gonna have to keep listening to that. I'm not stopping anytime soon.
but listen, I claim both of them. Like I see a part of humans in both chimpanzees and bonobos. Chimpanzees are the only other species that go to war. Bonobos have a lot of sex. Like in between there, you will find a human being. And during
Real.
the study, they actually included us in it. They were showing humans who were not trained on primate communication some of the signing and the gestures, let me not say signing, gestures that bonobos and chimpanzees were making. And
Mhm.
they were able to guess what those gestures meant from a multiple choice list greater than chance. And a lot of the gestures themselves are quite similar between bonobos and chimpanzees. Like about 90% of them were very similar. So it's seeming like this has definitely been something that has been existing for quite a while, maybe even before bonobos and chimpanzees split from their common ancestors, considering how similar some of these gestures are.
That
However, even with that, their communication was still quite simple and not as complex as, again, like human communication.
Mhm. That's definitely really interesting. I love to learn more about our non-human primate friends just across the rainforest. But the researchers in this study really wanted to take a deeper dive into understanding monkey communication. And so they set out to answer three different questions. The first was whether marmoset monkeys use feed calls to vocally label their conspecifics. One thing about me, I'm always going to mess up a word. So I'm gonna restart. Also, did you want to say
Yeah.
anything about the gorilla? Because I didn't know if you
Yeah, I
wanted.
saw that, and I think it's a good interjection. So I was thinking I might just put it somewhere else.
Okay, then I'll restart my section, but you can like move that to wherever you want to like put that right now.
I'll just probably mention it before the feed call since we're going to go back to talking about the way they communicate.
Okay, sounds good. No, it's definitely very interesting to learn about the ways that our non human primate friends communicate. And the researchers of this study wanted to take a deeper dive into understanding those methods. And so they sought out to answer three separate questions. The first was whether marmoset monkeys use feed calls to vocally label their conspecifics. And the second was whether different marmoset monkeys use similar vocal labels to address other conspecifics. So, do they name each other and multiple monkeys use the same name for each other. And the third was whether vocal labels are learned between monkeys, which means that monkeys find out that another monkey has a specific name and then they start using that same name for them. And the kind of setup of a lot of the experiments was they put a microphone on the front of two cages of monkeys, which had a visual barrier in between them, and they recorded the calls. And something that I thought was interesting about the setup was that the cages were different sizes. So one monkey was able to kind of freely move horizontally along the cage, while another was restricted. And at first, I was curious as to why they had one monkey restricted instead of allowing them both to kind of freely move along. But I honestly think it's probably because they wanted to control for each individual caller's behavior. So if they're trying to prove that these are localization calls, you kind of have to narrow down that one person is trying to self localize as they're moving. But I just felt really bad for the monkey that has to stay in one spot the whole time because you can hear your friend on the other side of the barrier having a jolly good time just moving around the room, and all you can do is just grip the bars and hope that they like.
Honestly, that reminds me of this like one study that I also learned in an intro neuro class for two reasons. One, I think they were doing a more basic version of the study with Japanese macaques.
Mhm,
Basically, they were recording their babies crying and then
mhm.
playing the vocalization of the baby crying back to a group of mothers to see if they could identify the baby by their voice. And one, the mom clearly looked stressed when it was her baby crying, and two, the other moms also knew it was her baby because they would be looking at her like, girl, get your baby. Like, what's going on? Like, and I'm just like, dang, like I'm like, one, y'all are torturing them the way they had them in that tiny
Listen,
cage. And then two, I was like, okay, like we are seeing the building blocks of them like identifying people by vocalization. Definitely not as complex, but it definitely was reminding me of those poor Japanese macaque mothers.
I was about to say them poor moms, them poor babies. Not they was about to call monkey CPS on them, but anyway. Another thing about this study is that the monkeys were able to see each other before the start of each experiment and before the visual barrier was placed and then the experiment was started. So the monkeys did get to kind of get a good look at one another. So to an extent, they already kind of knew who their companion on the other side of the barrier was. Although when they did start putting out the calls, sometimes they would test multiple different names and then finally land on the correct one. And this is just really interesting in general. Marmosets are a great kind of comparison for us because they are also very social primates that live in family groups of 2 to 8 animals. They're very similar to humans in that they pair bond and also cooperatively raise their youth. And another thing that they about their environment that is interesting and potentially applicable to us is that they live in the rainforest where there's lots of dense foliage, obviously, and that can obstruct their view of each other as they're moving or just kind of like wherever their whereabouts are. And so one theory is that they potentially vocally label each other to kind of protect the group and aid in just group cohesion and survival when they can't visually locate each other.
Yeah, a lot of communication is obviously evolutionary and came from the fact that those who were able to communicate with their social groups just fared better in the wild, which is why I always found like the Coco the gorilla sign language gate a little bit uncomfortable. Not that it was like necessarily bad that they tried to teach Coco the gorilla sign language, but
Mhm.
it was definitely like controversial in the science community because people were
Mhm.
always like, she only uses the sign language when prompted and never seems to want to use it much really for herself. And also a lot of the signings just people thought was just mimicry of the person who was teaching her how to sign, and
Mhm.
they weren't 100% sure that she had learned any of these gestures for real, but she was a hit. She was a celebrity back then, like.
Listen, watching you talk about it, you had reminded me when I saw that you had put that in the doc of Coco. Like I completely, because at first I squinted my eyes, I'm like, who? But then I remembered. I remember that when I was younger, I used to think she was so cute when she used to hold the cats. I remember that was a big selling point, and listen, they got me on that one.
They got me too. Like when I started learning about the actual specifics, I'm not gonna lie, it killed a little bit of the magic, but never meet your idols.
I was about to say
Never.
that's what happens when you major in neuroscience.
And honestly, at least with the feed calls, like these are natural to marmoset monkeys, so I feel like they're much more applicable in research and to me, just much less odd to study. And essentially, these feed calls that marmoset monkeys do are high pitched calls, and like they help identify other marmosets, but they're also just used for general communication to relay other information.
Oh, it's me. Can you, or should we just cut out the like
I think
gap?
we can cut it out because it was silent, so we can cut it really
Okay,
close
perfect.
together.
I was like, I kept reading, so I was like, I waited for gold, but it was me. Another thing about fee calls is that they are usually done when another group member is out of sight, and also to encode kind of caller related social information. So that could be caller identity or sex.
And the thing is, it's very similar to how humans speak in terms of like they go back and forth like an actual conversation. The cars aren't just like overlapping. In fact, they actually are better than us at letting somebody get their word out. It's usually around a 5 second pause before the other marmoset responds after one marmoset is done with their fee calls. And that pause and the fact that they're like kind of doing some form of call and response gives us more evidence to the fact that they're not just doing, random vocalizations. And also very similar to humans, like their
I
infants their infants pick up on feed calls through mimicking their parents. Again, very mama dada. And chimpanzees and bonobos don't even do this. So I that was another reason why it was interesting because I feel like again, like a lot of studying is done on their communication because of their genetic similarity. But here comes marmoset monkeys. Okay. Like I didn't really know that our cousins was out here doing the do like that. And these fee calls help with raising these offspring as well because they're very it takes a village in terms of marmoset infant raising. They raise these offspring communally, which is another way the fee calls come into play because sometimes they will eavesdrop, which I was like, Loki, that's super real. Like, sometimes you just need to open that ear up and see what everybody else is talking about. And essentially, they'll listen to fee calls from a conversation that they're not a part of to see if a marmoset monkey they don't really know or a stranger is cooperative or uncooperative and more aggressive because they use that information to choose who they want to basically be like to be helping them raise their offspring. So yeah, I was like, I get it. I get it.
They're just like me for real. Like they are just because I definitely be assessing the vibes of every situation and like adding that to my Rolodex of people's personalities. And I feel them. I would not leave my kid with some random stranger who doesn't seem very responsible. Like, girl, you was out till 3 a.m.? Not you. It's okay though.
Dang, a marmoset can't have a little fun and still be a good auntie?
She can have fun.
Okay.
Us just not in this house, not in this jungle. Okay,
It's
not
strict over here. It's strict over here. Let me go
it is
party with the
strict over here.
bonobos.
It's strict. And you see how the marmosets get down? Exactly. Exactly. So let's get into the findings of this study because we've already talked about experimental setup, the way marmosets live, and why we feel like the way they're going about communicating might have a little bit more to it than we originally thought. And so the findings from the study were largely positive and maybe contribute to Gold's theory that they need to start paying taxes. First, bee calls definitely decreased during periods where the monkey was stationary, and so that does contribute to the theory that they're used for localization because it seems like they utilize them more as they're moving along the cage trying to show their companion, or I guess tell their companion exactly where they're at. And then monkeys do indeed actually use vocal labels to address different conspecifics with statistically significant data for the predicted versus true receiver of the call by the models that these researchers did. So basically, 9 times out of 10, when they were saying, like, oh, this call was meant for Gold would actually be the one to receive and respond to the call. So that was a really huge finding to show that they actually are talking to very specific people when they're letting out these calls. And also, they were more likely to answer calls directed at them versus calls directed to other monkeys. So just how, like, when you're out in public and you wave to your friend and you're like, hey, oh, hey, insert name, and they turn around to look at you, that's exactly what these monkeys are doing too. They are very much only responding to things that are more directed to them and very much letting things slide to the other monkeys when, I don't know, they're not in a social mood. And not only that, they were also able to correctly identify the caller, meaning when they responded to whoever was calling out to them, they were usually able to say, like, oh, that's Gold calling out to me. Let me say, hey, girl, or that's Dan. Like, they were able to actually figure that out. And different monkeys also use the same vocal labels for each other, with families using similar calls for the same receiver. So the researchers had 3 different families. Family B was actually genetically related, and then family A and C's were paired together when they were mature adults and then kind of like got used to each other. And they found that within those family groups, like, yeah, they're more likely to have like similar acoustic features to kind of like encode like the identity of the other person. And families I got myself mixed up. I'm gonna start from different monkeys use the same vocal labels if that's cool. Also, different monkeys use the same vocal labels for each other, with families using similar calls for the same receiver. So, in this study, they had 3 different families. Family B was actually genetically related to each other, and families A and C were monkeys that were just paired together when they were mature adults. And they found out that, yes, within families, they were more likely to use similar vocal labels for the intended receiver than throughout the groups. And families are also more likely to use similar acoustic features within the kind of nature of the call to encode the identity of others. There were like 16 plus markers, I think, that kind of contributed to unique calls for each person. Not one specific marker itself encoded like a specific form of identity, but all of them kind of lent to like saying like, oh, this is exactly who this person is. And finally, something that was really, really interesting, aside from the fact that we now know that yes, they are calling each other names, and yes, within families, they have more similar names for each other, monkeys can actually learn these vocal labels by listening to dialogues between other monkeys and imitating the calls. And the reasons that the researchers know this is because, once again, family A and C are not genetically related. They were paired together when they were already adults, which is showing that over time, they were able to kind of figure out what the names of each other's were. And also to the other groups, they were also able to have kind of a good accuracy for the names of people within the other, or not people, monkeys within the other groups. And so that's showing that over time, they're able to kind of pick up on the feed calls that are being used for specific monkeys and incorporate that into their language.
Yeah. Honestly, this study really revealed so much to me for real. Like I feel like this is so much more complex than honestly any primate communication that I was even previously learning during my degree. So it's very cool. And although we are very excited about this monkey communication, why are we pouring research funding into this and why does it matter? Well, the thing is, humans, we are also primates. Like, I know people always are kind of just like primates and human. Like, it's really not an and. Like, we're also primates. So, any.
Sorry, that's
Like,
just funny.
people like those animals and then us. And I'm like, no, sister. No, sister. Like,
When I
not to
was
be
younger,
on PETA, but.
when I was younger, that used to get on my nerves bad was people like trying to separate animals from humans because I'm like, that doesn't even make logical sense. But you do you, babe. Like,
Like literally you got it. And like I said, like because marmoset monkeys are primates and like they're the first primates to vocally label their conspecifics and show this level of complex vocal communication, it's actually incredibly important for us to look into this if we want to learn about human language ourselves because a lot of neuroscience research is starting from another mammal, looking at the homologous areas in their brain, which are areas in their brain that, if they are not exactly the same, are incredibly similar due to common ancestors and usually do similar functions. And when we look at those homologous areas in their brains, it kind of cues us into what might be happening in our brains when we're speaking, when we're listening, when we're learning to communicate. And having an understanding of feed calls just allows scientists to have more and more accurate look on not only human language, but even possibly like human social dynamics because we're seeing those social like we're seeing different social dynamics within marmoset monkeys and being able to understand them more because we're understanding their level of communication. Like we already said, they're also social animals. They were put in a evolutionary situation where learning vocalizations was important to survival possibly. So those things can possibly have through lines and parallels towards humans and understanding why we are this way. So these this research is usually the building block for a lot of our, again, like neuroscience and sociological research.
for sure. By being able to understand the mechanisms through which they communicate, it can honestly even help us figure out when humans transferred from non linguistic communication to language all those centuries or thousands of years ago. And so I know, like Gold has already mentioned, like sometimes people look at research and they're like, how can this really apply to my life? Like, yeah, this is cool, but what can we do with this? But you'd be surprised by the amount of practical applications that come from these kind of ethological studies of different animals. And all animals in the animal kingdom have something to teach us, but specifically non-human primates, because they're so close to humans and we share common ancestors, they actually have a lot to teach us, and it's always really cool to see. So
Yeah, so learn more about your primate cousins, y'all. Like they're very interesting. Like one, like NBV 201, which was the course where I was learning about non-human primate neuroscience, was one of the most interesting courses I had taken. So check up on them. Let them know you're watching, and let them know those taxes are coming, mama.
first of all, you need to get if the first thing they need to do is get a restraining order from you before they need to learn the legal system. Because Gold, you know that one meme of that? Mind you, I've never watched his show ever. I'm just chronically online, but there's this one meme of this guy from the show, and he like always looks like he's on because I think he like is investigating the main character. It's like Dexter or Hannibal or one of those shows where the main character is definitely committing crimes and this dude is definitely investigating them, and he's always like looking suspicious. Like he's always just looking suspicious, and so people have started memeing it online of just like random memes of him just looking mad suspicious, and they always put it in the comment section when somebody says something sus. And low key, I feel like that's gonna be you anytime you see a marmoset monkey.
No, because they need to start alerting the rest of the animal kingdom. You see what we going through right now? Mm-mm.
LOL. But on the note of classes that we took in college, it's time for everybody's favorite section, which is bits of BS. And just to refresh the audience's memory again, this is when Gold and I kind of go over funny, interesting, annoying, or just specific moments within our undergraduate career that we feel compelled to share. It's almost like a therapy session where we relive our past traumas again and again and again. But listen, at least we're through it.
Yeah, and honestly, I can start. And mine is definitely a undergrad experience, but it's not even so much so about classes. Ooh, it was about that housing lottery. And I know some of y'all just got hairs standing up on your neck the second I said that. So essentially, I just went to a school that did not have enough housing for upperclassmen, point blank, period. Like, there was just not enough.
Mhm.
And housing was only guaranteed your freshman and sophomore year, and then you are thrown into the wolves that is the housing lottery. And essentially, at my school, we had like singles, doubles, three people, and then up to four people. And where you got to live was just dependent on one, how many people you were paired with, and who in your group had the earliest housing lottery time. So junior year comes, or really like end of sophomore year, right before, like when we're deciding where we're going to live junior year. And I just remember getting my timing for the housing lottery, and it was actually not too bad. Like, it was like quite average, and so was like a lot of my friends. They were quite average, and we really weren't thinking too much of it until upperclassmen was like, oh, you got that time, good luck, Charlie. Nobody in your group got an earlier time. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by that? Safe to say that me and all of those friends who thought that we were going to be good, when I tell you not a single one of us got housing, like, not a single one got housing. And at a moment, we thought we were just going to have to be on the streets talking about, if you put a buck in my cup, because I was like, what do you, no one is going to approve our apartment when we don't got a job and I can't live at my college.
If
It
you
was a
put
dark time, to say the
uh,
least.
put a buck in a cup. First of all, that is cultural appropriation of homeless people culture. Like, and they should jump you the next time you on the streets. But second of
I
all,
was about to be one of them the way Emery was playing. So
LOL. But no, I do remember you telling me about this, and the entire situation, the way it ended up, was insane. But guys, that's the story of how, or the start of the story of how Gold and I became roommates. LOL.
yes.
um, okay. Very, very interesting. But honestly, I feel like housing is an issue at all universities because GT, we had the exact same problems. Like those wait lists for housing would be hundreds long. Like, what do you mean you're telling me you 327 on the wait list, but you still got hope? Listen, I didn't have those kinds of problems because I lived off campus, but my friends who did live on campus, they were definitely going through it. And like, yeah, once you're an upperclassman, you better just kiss them dorms goodbye and just start looking for a place to live off of campus.
Literally, though.
All right, my bit of VS, I chose not to be too specific and more so just talk about kind of a phenomenon that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially in undergrad, especially when you're in a really hard class, which is just like that moment when you open up the test and you start laughing because that is all there is to do. Like, for me, that I've had that situation happen to me multiple times in multiple different classes. Like, that's on me for doing engineering. But anyways, like, oh my god, like every time, like it's just an immediate like, let somebody else take the wheel, please. Like,
Literally. Sometimes I just be like, they'll be like, all right, you can flip it open. And I'm just like, "Ooh, first look at the first question. All right, let's try the back. Look at some questions back there." At that point, I'm like, right.
how do
Okay,
you
just vote.
right flip
Like,
just flip it closed at that point? Which, mind you, that's how you know it's going bad, is when you go and you look at all the questions. Because low key for me, if I knew what I was doing, I would just jump straight into like solving it. Like, I might do like a quick peek of all the questions, but I would like jump straight into solving the first question because I'm like, okay, I got this. If I take my time going through all the questions in that pamphlet, baby, that's because I don't know the answers. That's because
at that point, it's
I
just so cooked. Like you'll be doing that on the midterms, just like, okay, so at least we know the finals is gonna be a buzzer beater. At least there's no surprise there. Okay. At least I know I'm gonna be on that thing that's calculating your final grade in December. Like at least I know now. Okay.
Shout out to Roger Hub. Shout out to Grade Calculator. Shout out to all the people that held me down. Okay, listen, I used to be in the test calculating how many I was getting wrong to try to see what my
Yeah.
grade would be.
Like that's the thing. I'm over here starring the ones that I'm just like, oh, it's cooked for you, cooked for you. All right.
I use the star.
Okay. I'd be like, at best at 82, at worst a 13. Okay, sure.
No, that's so real. Like, I hate when the standard deviation be a little too high. I'd be like, all right.
That's when you know you gotta start asking your friends after the test. He do partial credit? He do partial? She do partial credit?
Listen, all I know is either way, I'm getting a sweet treat after. If it went good, cool. I'm gonna get a sweet treat for hooray. If it went bad, I'm gonna get a sweet treat to say that it's okay. Shout out to that one TikTok I saw. He's really a poet of our generation. Like,
For me, I was just like giving myself pep talks. Like, I showed my work. Wasn't madeupmonkeyshit.com possibly, but I showed my work.
listen, sometimes it's just monkey business. And what can you say? Although, honestly, they probably got more going on than we do. Shout out to the marmoset monkeys. It was very, very cool to talk about everything that they've got going on. We hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. We hope that you learned a little bit more about our non human primate friends and what they've got going on. And you should definitely do more research into it. We've put all the required reading in the description box so you can go and read the study yourself, as well as just learn more about marmoset monkeys in general. But with all that said and done, as always, guys, remain educated, remain curious, remain critical, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.